versus Swidz. And correct me if I'm wrong, Sottle, but both of these players are already locked in for Division A. So this is more just about how far they can go. Can they bank some more points and just have a higher finish in the first 3 weeks of Swiss? And shock horror, we're seeing Paladin, we're seeing Shaman, we're seeing Druid. And then, funnily enough, Mage and Hunter again. Very interesting that these two seem to be the other classes. And it is, again, just a tough one because I personally, and maybe too much, but rate Hunter quite highly right now if you bring in a solid list. And it is just being left up, whereas Mage, I feel because it's susceptible to Hunter, I'm surprised it's the Hunter that's being left up when people are planning to bring Mage. Or expecting, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very valid point. Like I said, the stats show that Hunter is massively overperforming. The much smaller sample of that one Boston series shows that Hunter is underperforming. But yeah, definitely the weight of numbers is on Hunter's side in this tournament so far. 64.9% win rate overall across all regions. And like I said, that breaks down into a positive win rate in every match that's been played. So it doesn't have a positive win rate against Rogue Warrior or Demon Hunter because it's played those decks 0 times, because you'd have to be a lunatic to be leaving up any of those decks in this format.
I will note as well as we just dive into some of the classes, and mainly we are going to talk about Shaman Paladin, but the Shaman from Swidz is like a third archetype. If you go back to the times where we all were crying about how good Shaman was on ladder, he's playing Galakron Shaman, but like actual Galakron, like not Evolve. He's just playing Serpent Shrine Portal, Marsh Spawns, the Hagatha's Scheme, so a bit of a slower list, Dragon's Pact, the Fist of Raden, which is a legendary weapon for Shaman that they got this rotation, and a few other cards. So this feels much more like just almost just a mid-range deck with a sprinkling of removal in there. And I honestly, Sottle, just have no clue how this will perform in this sort of pocket meta we're playing in this weekend.
Yeah, this is a real curveball. It's something that maybe I was expecting we might see, one or two more of across all regions. Is players sort of going into the prep and sort of saying, okay, I'm going to ban decks I play against specifically Paladin, Shaman, Druid, and Mage, or whatever your strategy is going to end up being. And then say, okay, what absolute nonsense deck can I come up with that just specifically beats those 4 things? Because we saw, like, when we've had 10-deck formats in the past, admittedly with much more complex ban phases than we see in this one, we've seen, for example, like, double Hex, double Clockwork Giants, Shamans being used to like specifically counter handlock at another time where Shaman was at its weakest in the metagame. So just really lining up one of those classes as like a real snipe deck into something else. This format is very different and doesn't quite allow for that same level of stuff. But I was expecting to see 1 or 2 decks like Swidz coming out here.
Yeah, pretty cool overall. I do believe the first matchup is going to be a Druid Mirror. Both players bringing the usual token/spell Druid. A couple of differences. Swidz bringing the Ysera, your favorite inclusion in Druid Sottle, and SilverName bringing, interestingly enough, the newer version of Druid, not his older version. His older version was maybe better versus aggro, and he's bringing Kel'Thalas, Exotic Mount Seller lists. So SilverName just keeping me on my toes and confusing me, as he's wont to do. But we'll see how it pans out. So really, it's kind of the KT normal style versus does a Ysera win in the mirror if it's not discarded? Or a KT and Ysera just going to sit in the discard pile together and just complain about the deck? We'll find out.
For the record, I have no hard stance on Ysera Unleashed in this deck. That was a very throwaway line about the Fungal Fortunes thing. I think it's done perfectly fine for the people that have been choosing to include it. I think it's a very reasonable inclusion in when you're expecting certain things to come out. But this is an extremely turbulent matchup that we're going to see here, and it probably will end up getting decided long before big 7 drops and 9 drops can come into play, because quite often it's one player with a board and the other player not being able to answer it quite early into proceedings, and that quite often spells a GG in this matchup.
Yes, so really just looking for those glowflies, and even the ramp isn't particularly important. Do you agree, Sottle? Because I feel like as long as you get glowflies down and you have some level of support for the ongoing turn, you're looking fantastic regardless of what your mana is.
I do. I think it's important, just not necessarily as important as the glowfly coming down, because I think still hitting 7 and activating Bog Beams and Iron Barks and so on can actually help you break ties where like both players do just get an early Glowfly down, for example. If one of you then has 7 mana to back that up and the other one doesn't, it's much, much easier for you to answer their board state than it is for them to you, right?
Yep, that is true. And then maybe the odd desperation, if one player ramps and the other player Glowflies, then the response to the Glowfly might be a big Mount Seller turn, right? So I guess that's can be a close difference, but we'll see how it pans out as both players not really going too crazy in the old ramp scenario quite yet, although there is a wild growth in Swidz hand.
Yeah, SilverName does now have it next turn, though, with the Innovate. Swidz does not, even though with an Innovate of his own, he would be able to throw it out here on turn 3 if he had the Glowflies, but he does not.
Swidz does have Starfall, though. So the playing Glowflies is answerable, and that could just crack the game pretty wide open, actually.
Yeah, and he is playing 2 copies of Starfall in his deck as well, whereas I believe if the deck lists are to be trusted here, SilverName is playing 0, so there's a pretty big advantage over to Team Swidz in this one. There we have it. SilverName just going to shut his eyes. Say, I don't care about your Starfalls.
I guess the worry, not that Swidz should ever not Starfall here as far as I'm concerned, but the worry he does have is if he Starfalls and SilverName refills, he's just in the same spot but then without a Starfall. Is a little bit fearful, but I don't really think he has another option. He cannot let SilverName buff this board or Soul of the Forest this board, right?
He's going to do it with Kaothas instead. Sure.
Okay.
I mean, this makes sense. Yeah,
yeah,
I like
I
this. Good
don't
spot.
mind this at all.
Actually gets ahead of the play.
People are addicted to it.
SilverName with a shake of the head. And yep, that about sums it up, I think.
And this, as you were pointing out a little bit earlier, is where the lack of the usual like turn 4 overgrowth rest of the game comes in, because SilverName's still only on 5 mana.
Yeah.
And 5 mana doesn't do much versus a 4/7, and when you are expecting something big to happen next turn, because KT is going to stick as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where the ramp comes in. It is generally like a fallback, I guess is a good way to describe it, because if, SilverName had ramped and was still in the same position, then, maybe he can have a Mount Seller turn. Maybe he can pop off with Kaothas Overflow. Maybe his Mount Seller finds a couple of Diving Griffins and he's able to clear up the Kaothas, and he's, actually got a chance in the game again. But as it stands right now, not so much.
Yep, KT is smiling as he cannot be discarded if he is already on the board. So Fungal Fortune's the best time to cast there for Swidz. It's going to help potentially unlock a big turn, and now I see a Glowfly Subtle.
I do too. I also see an Overflow though, so we'll see how spicy Swidz is going to get here. I think
he doesn't need to, does he?
I mean, it's not a matter of needing to or not. Like, if it's better, it's better. I think, like, we've seen a lot of turns in Grandmasters where players just haven't done everything they could do just because of rope considerations. They just haven't had time to see it. The problem that Swidz would see here, though, is probably just hand size in terms of making that happen. You wouldn't have room to fit it all in. So I think just the straight-up Glowflies could be enough.
I can see.
Although if he dumps both Crystal... Okay. Alright, well, I guess it doesn't matter at this point. Thank you, SilverName, from saving me from having to work that turn out.
Yeah, that was a little bit rough there for SilverName. He looked like he got ahead enough on board with the Glowflies, but strong answer. And a good spot again from Swidz. With just the KT along with the Starfall just set up the whole game from him. And from that point, if KT is sat on the board and he isn't in any trouble, it doesn't get removed, we saw SilverName have to just hero power into it and pass, you're probably going to win that game of Hearthstone if you have KT and cards. So we did see Swidz take game number 1 there. We're going to go to a very short break while we set up the next game. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with some more Hearthstone Grandmasters. We are back to continue SilverName versus Swidz. Bit of a quick one in game number 1. Swidz managed to take it in the Druid mirror, but there's plenty more where that came from. This is only match 2 of the day if you are just tuning in recently. We've got plenty of Hearthstone coming up, and as always, Americas will be following up a little bit later on with TJ and Frodan when we are done, so make sure to stay tuned to catch that out a little bit later. But for now, SilverName versus Swidz. Swidz leading 1-0. He has to win with 3 of these decks. So he can switch between them at will unless he's won with it. So the Druid is out, but now he can pick between his Shaman, Paladin, and Hunter. A little bit different with no ban on screen. The bans were off screen, so just a little bit different for the past couple of weeks, but still looking pretty good for Swidz so far.
Yeah, it certainly has been. It was, when you kind of get Druid against Druid with 2 Starfall versus 0 Starfall, yeah, you kind of just have to say, all right, friend, you've got me in the deck building and the matchup queue order there. Like, there's probably not much of a chance for me to win that one unless things go in a particularly freakish direction. So I think SilverName just kind of has to hold that one. We'll move on from there. And it looks like we are not only going to see our first Mage game of the day, Raven, but we are also going to see what this Shaman deck from Swidz is capable of.
Yeah, very interesting. I'll give a very quick rundown of some of the key cards, especially for this matchup for the Shaman. So it's Galakrond focused, but there is curve cards, just like a Surging Tempest or 2 Surging Tempest in the list. But Lady Vash is in there, which is the Shaman Prime card. You can see the Fist of Raden in there as well. But the interesting ones for me are going to be the difference between Swidz playing a slightly slower, clunkier Shaman in terms of minion pressure, which Mage can freeze out, but he also runs double Hagatha's Scheme and double Hex, which are great answers to a lot of the cards that Mage wants to. Like Mage plays slow, big, clunky dudes as well. So I think the clash between these 2 decks is going to get very, very interesting. And Swidz off to a good start with 2 Surging Tempests nice and early.
Right.
Also, just a small note as well, the Fist of Raden, along with the Lightning Bolts, the only card it will get is the Priest Prime, which is the Reliquary, I think. Is that right? Is that the name? I think so. That's the only one it can get, which will then, obviously, if they die, shuffle the 6/8 untargetable Taunt Lifesteal minions in the deck, which is pretty huge. It's a nice little combo. So far, though, you wouldn't believe this was a bit of a slower deck from Swidz. It's getting off to a pretty solid start right now.
He is, yeah. I mean, hitting both of his 1-drops certainly helped him out with that.
The only 1-drops in the deck, apart from Lightning Bolt, which obviously you don't want to hit on turn 1.
Yeah.
But yeah, very, very solid indeed.
Swidz did also keep Galakrond, which I have generally been doing, not playing this deck, but generally with Galakrond Galakrond decks in this metagame, I found it's quite easy to run out of value when your deck plays sort of very limited card draw if you don't end up hitting that Galakrond, so I do think you can get away with keeping it in any given matchup. Probably should.
Yes, and the key point for this, I believe, is that Swidz, because he will fairly consistently have his Galakrond maxed, because he's running 2 obs of all the Galakrond evokes, apart from Corrupt Elementalist, but Corrupt Elementalist does it twice anyway, so it's kind of 2. He will definitely want the weapon, maybe more than the minions, right? And the minions may be very reactive versus what Mage could have, but with the speed he's going, he might not even get to that point anyway, but I think the 10 damage will be very useful versus exactly Mage in this match.
Right. Nothing
really tough now.
Super exciting for SilverName to curve into here, even with the Mana Saber.
Does he just have to actually play Frizz and attack and then just use Arcane Breath to kill off the 2/2? So he can kill the two Elementalists?
Yes. Like, he almost wants to just keep it stealth so he can still have it next turn for the Blizzard, but that is a luxury he just cannot afford right now, I don't think.
He can if he Ray of Frosts, right? He can Ray Arcane Breath if he really wants to.
And just skip Frizz completely.
Yep.
I guess that makes sense.
Gonna set up for the Blizzard next turn as well if he doesn't draw a dragon. He can play Blizzard either way, as long as the Mana Saber lives, of course.
So if you know a Blizzard's coming, is this just a Fist turn? Because you kind of know a blizzard's coming with that setup, right? I think that seems fairly obvious.
And also, well, Devoted Maniac doesn't really do much. You're not necessarily casting Scheme anytime soon, so Devoted Maniac can come down next turn, almost regardless, so why not, right? Get it equipped. I'm going to quickly check SilverName's Mage list. He is not running an Ooze, so there is, again, only the Zephyrus. And then, arguably, freeze effects that can be discovered or whatever to lock him out of a swing. But you don't really need the weapon to swing anyway, so that fist is probably pretty safe right now.
Time is short.
And also, if Zephyrus comes down to destroy the weapon, well, it's not a blizzard, is it? So he gets to keep the board and win. Oh, really? Not sure I like this.
It does seem curious. I'm trying to work out like whether we're just caster visioning and if there's another card that could be signifying the setup that SilverName had on the previous turn. It does seem like pretty clearly the Blizzard. I guess he could have been being scared of like the full scam with Dragoncaster into something huge. Like if he underdevelops, he kind of gets punished by like Dragoncaster Power of Creation or something like that.
I just wonder if... Well, my issue with that is... Well, his 2 minions he'll summon have Rush anyway. Except he'll have a weapon. And don't get me wrong, the weapon's not a good swinging weapon, but the minions he has have Rush, so they're going to be pretty flexible regardless. And I think that was a good time to invest the 4 mana into the Fist, because that's the biggest issue with that weapon itself, is the mana cost for its immediate outcome does not often pay off that well. It's more of a, you invest the mana on a sort of turn-by-turn basis, and then it pays it for itself much later in the day.
Yeah, sure.
You could just see the difference in turns, right? This would have been the other way around, except this turn would have been playing the Devoted Maniac, right? So he could at least kill something off. Does that Haggath's scheme stacking up, though?
Answer the Mana Saber this turn, which is pretty huge. Denies Siamat and various other cards this turn.
Yeah, Mana Saber definitely more and more so lately the key to the Mage deck, isn't it? It just unlocks the capabilities of the deck so much faster.
Yeah.
You mortals know nothing of madness!
Could be AI, I suppose. He has hand space for it, which is somewhat rare with this deck.
It could be. I was wondering whether you go Nova, because it's getting to the point where the only thing you're scared of is the big 8/8s from the Galakron, potentially.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
he has Siamat next turn, he can freeze and do other things the turn after. Alexstrasza coming up soon, so... Oh, I guess if Mana Saber lives, he can do it even faster. But I think the only thing he's scared of is Swidz sticking a big board. So I do like the Nova. It's just one for a rainy day, right?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I think it's more the threat of the Fist. It's like he's a long way with like invokes and then playing Galakron. Yeah. He's a long way away from getting 8/8s from that thing. But I think with the Fist equipped, sure, he's still pretty scared of the big board coming down.
Oh.
Whoa! Okay.
Look at SilverName. He's had enough.
That belongs in a museum.
Ah, the card SilverName wanted.
Yes, SilverName will be very much thinking that that does belong in a museum right now.
Yeah, I guess maybe forgive us, viewers. If you are not familiar with Fist, we probably should have told you. It's not a card we see too often. As you can probably tell by now, though, it makes a legendary of the spell cost you cast while it is equipped and uses 1 durability per spell. So we played a 2-mana spell, it made a 2-mana legendary. We played a 5-mana spell, it made a 5-mana legendary.
Yes. And unlike what Raven was saying about the 1-mana legendary spot, there are definitely other 2-drop legendaries
Yes.
he could have got, as opposed to the one that shuffles a prime into his deck.
I wonder if that'll ever happen somehow, where you can have all of the primes.
Oh, I'm sure there's already a Reddit thread of it happening. Like, There's just a way to Reddit thread.
Fortunately, a lot of times in my past when I get told there's a Reddit thread, more often than not that.
Oh, what have I said now? Oh, God.
No, it's normally, who was the sixth caster again? Oh, was that Derek or literally anyone but the person it actually was? Agatha's scheme gets the job done. It's just an unfun job, isn't it? Because it's the Mana Saber's a threat, but not quite a Hagatha scheme at away level of threat going on. And the Malygos has already done its job anyway, so it just feels bad. But the other two cards are effectively locked out of Swidz' turn anyway.
Are they? Is Galakron not legal here? Galakron feels pretty legal here.
Oh, wait. Yes. They're
This
not
is
8-8,
strong, right?
subtle.
This is strong.
It is strong. It is strong.
He gets to push 2. He actually chose to give up a weapon charge there in order to be able to push 2 with the elemental instead of trading with the elemental.
I like it.
Kind of interesting.
Well, for me, he wants the game to end very quickly, yes? And he has one spell in hand, and he has one durability on his weapon. Looks like it adds up fine to me.
Okay.
Well,
yeah,
he knows.
If SilverName can't answer this board state now, then Swidz just does set up Kronk's lethal like multiple ways with this push. So yeah, I really like playing the Galakron here.
What to do?
Problem here that we can see for Swidz is SilverName has a plethora of ways to at least continue the game. And I think with the nod to Alexstrasza coming out, you can actually get away with keeping this Frost Nova and actually just go for the Rust Steel Ray and an Ice Barrier. So, it's gonna actually play it. Okay.
I like this. I didn't quite follow your logic because he wants to play Dragon Queen Alexstrasza next turn, ideally, right? So I think clearing the board gives himself the best chance of being able to do that. I didn't quite follow what you were saying about the other way around.
So I think, for me, the idea is that, one, Swidz would have to get through Rusteel, which has already killed one minion, and then also with Barrier, he gains enough health to be safe through, say, Lightning Bolts, potentially, so he can actually play it. So he can actually safely land an Alexstrasza, and then Nova the game out, basically.
Sure.
Was my rough idea. I probably didn't explain that very well, but basically, the health on the Rusteel Raider, plus the Ice Barrier, would have got him there. They go for a different route, though.
Yeah. Certainly if he wasn't able to play Dragon Queen Alexstrasza on 9, he has Dragon Queen Alexstrasza plus Malygos' Nova on 10, which is a very go-to combo with this deck when you do pick up the Nova. Which is why you see him, I think, so desperate not to use the Frost Nova this turn, even though it looked very appealing alongside that Doomsayer.
Yeah, and this is the turn I think I wanted to see last turn, except now he's facing down more damage, which is always scarier, of course. I did wonder whether SilverName was going to lose the game of Chicken and actually play Nova Doomsayer that turn. It didn't go.
So how much can Swidz push here? 8 on board, plus 6, 14 Ghostface. SilverName's at 19 with an Ice Barrier. Okay. It's still the play though, right?
Yeah, so, what was it, 14 to face, right?
4, 6, 8, plus 6, yeah. 14.
I think 14 to face seems pretty good to me, so and a board.
Play your rush guys, buff them all up, trade the rush guys into the 1/4, smash face with everything. Seems good. He's gonna hold? He's gonna hold?
Okay. So he wants to test the secret first, and then he can say, well, I'll Kronks for deal 5, depending on what the secret is.
I think he's just not playing Kronks this turn, yeah.
Yeah, I think if he wasn't playing it to buff the board, then you hold it, right? You can always make an 8-8 if this board is cleaned up, or if Reno comes down. Whoa. So not
That is a pretty solid collection of dragons.
yeah, and funnily enough, not like the truly crazy ones, but just two very good ones, right?
Yeah, only one of them is usable though, is the problem, because there's no auxiliary dragon in hand anymore.
Mm.
So they need to activate each other.
It's always the goose. You can get another Nova, you can get Frostbolt, get a few things that are playable this turn.
You mortals know nothing of magic.
And mainly, the 2-1 Elemental protects him from the Rot Nest.
Yeah, I think most importantly he's Novering this turn anyway. So it doesn't really matter whether he kills
Sure.
a minion or not, you know? Tiamat is pretty exciting.
What if he just clears this turn?
How?
How? Scheme Hero Power? Okay, clears everything but the Malagos.
Okay.
Malagos is a 2-1. Like, 2-1s aren't important to me, so. Unless they've got Rush.
Wow. Imagine
Now,
saying
if it was a
that about
1-1
all those org merchants that were carrying us in testing.
It's the battle cry that's important, so.
Winds of the south, come to my aid.
We go for just a Divine Shield Rush, I guess. Keep hold of the board, leave the other dragons up.
I mean, yeah, do you really want to blow up all of your own board in order to just, you know, essentially kill an extra 6/5 in this scenario? I think so. Whoa!
Okay. That's some stuff.
Sure is.
He's gonna go for the
on
Deep Freeze.
6/6? Yeah. Yeah, fine. I guess playing this first is technically correct. He has room to do it. It's hidden information, so he should reveal that first before he does anything else. But I'm pretty sure this is always going to be the So now he can delete the board if he wants to. Again, he is clearing up a lot of his own stuff. I think he's much more behind now than he was last turn.
What about?
I'm very interested now to see if Swidz is on just a burn plan.
Mm-hmm.
Because he has Kronks. As I mentioned earlier, there are 2 Lightning Bolts in the deck, so... And he has a Manatide Totem, so he can dig a little bit.
Well, it's what confused me a little bit, because if he was going to be on a burn plan, he dealt more damage playing it on the turn I was talking about before. He dealt 6 damage with it then, as opposed to dealing 5.
Maybe he was unsure because he was ahead on board for quite a while, so maybe he thought he wasn't going to get cleaned up, but with Reno and Reno, as well as some other options like a Yogg Box, I feel like you can't expect to keep a board forever versus Mage. So I think I'm with you. I did like cashing in some damage, but I think he thought he might have been able to just finish the game the old-fashioned way. Oof. Okay.
Khadgar Power is a possibility since he can freeze out so much of the damage here anyway, but if he completely whiffs, he's still dead to Lightning Bolt off the top.
I like Khadgar Power. He never whiffs.
We must stand together, united for Dalaran.
Just have to freeze first. I'll trade first, should I say. Make some room.
Mm-hmm. Safeguard.
Say the magic word. Say the magic word. Say the magic word.
Wait. That was
What?
weird.
What?
Did the voice lines only happen 3 times?
Maybe.
I don't trust that last save. That was weird, because I thought, oh, it's going to happen twice because it summons 2, and then Khadgar's just like duplicating them, right? But I think the voice line just happened 3 times then. It's freaked me out a little bit.
That last one's just not a safe at all. It's just a cardboard box painted silver. It's an imposter. It's gotta be speed time.
There's definitely a snake in that box. Oh, Safeguard's so good versus Scheme though, and not that because these are particularly threatening minions, but because they just soak up so much damage.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Convenient scheme timing in that it dealt 9 though, so he does at least get to keep his 4-1 hanging around.
And also it does mean that this Marsh spawn is live next turn for Swidz, so he can get something available to him. But
Oh.
Yep. Everyone will join me in always when they see that Discover of the Demon, wishing it was the live deal 6 damage every time and not a battle cry. Every time I see it, I'm like, oh wait, of course it's not that one.
Welp. Seems about time. We've seen one Pyroblast go face for lethal.
Is it not better to Marsh spawn? I guess it's changed too much.
AI's good.
Lightning Bolt!
AI is very good. Rolling Fireball does now proc both heals, which cuts out his direct lethal outs. Okay. Pretty mediocre.
You can clean off these card tuts if he really wants to. Pretty easily with just a hero power. It just means he doesn't get to play any of his 3 costs. And funnily enough, that, unless he Lightning Bolts now, deactivates his Marsh spawn, so I think he should Lightning Bolt face.
I think he should Lightning Bolt face.
Actually, on that spell damage, Sol.
I mean, it's just discovering a spell. It's not the greatest thing in the world, is it?
Well, it could be a Lava Burst. Oh!
That's a guaranteed full clear.
That was Solara.
Classic interaction. Mirror Entity used to be a much more common card in kind of aggressive secret-based mage decks, and that was always something that you had to look out for when you played up against Doomsayer defensive decks. Make sure this does not happen to you. It's appeared in a much more roundabout way here. Here we are again.
And the other secret is Counterspell, correct? We did see it get cast earlier on. Farsight. Need to play him. Oh! Okay.
Prime after prime after prime.
Yeah, a shame about Vash, honestly, because I feel like it's one of the very consistent primes, but just because Shaman isn't where it wants to be right now, you don't really see it actually played that much, but the card is very good. Like basically Farsight 3 spells from your deck is a pretty good card as far as I'm concerned. Spell damage as well, going to help out with some of that burst.
This deck does seem to be able to keep going. It's looked like on several occasions that Swidz was kind of dead and buried when those safeguards and Kartuk defenders started coming out. But certainly marching on forward here. Now has both lightning bolts built up with the spell damage and the Marsh Drake active. Raven's insisting is so important.
It is. That's going to get him lethal, bet you. Ooh! Okay. I will say as well, just...
Oh,
you forgot.
Oh no! SilverName!
He's just dead! That's the game! I told you the Marsh Shake was going to do it.
Literally just still in his hand, unplayed.
But it was the threat of it threw SilverName off, and he forgot about the Mage secret potentially being a counter spell.
No, I don't think he forgot about it. I don't think he had anything to do but make that play. He didn't have any other cards in hand that reacted to that board, and he knew he had to react to that board. So I think he just kind of had to rip it and see what happened.
Yeah,
I'm not sure from his play, like how many secrets he had that narrowed down to, that it could be from Swidz's side, but I'm not sure he had an alternative play apart from just going and just hoping it wasn't counterspell in that scenario.
Yeah, honestly, I will try and make my calls work to the expense of some players. So yeah, good call, Sol. Reining me in on that one. But yeah, in all honesty, that deck looks impressive. The Galakrad Shaman, I mean, it did go. There was the play just at the end that we didn't quite get to talk about but it wasn't a big deal anyway. Just the Mana Tide with 4 cards left in the deck really just the game wasn't going to continue much past that anyway. He really wanted to see those lightning bolts. So I like it from Swidz going 2-0 up, which means he has the choice of Paladin or Hunter. You can talk for a second, Sottle, where I judge Swidz' Hunter deck.
Okay, sure. I was more interested in what his Paladin was in particular, so if you want to look up that while you're at it, because I think if he's found a Highlander Paladin here, then maybe we'll see it, but I think if it's Murloc Paladin, I think most players are now of the opinion that that deck shouldn't be played if you can avoid it, and you should just default to Hunter here almost regardless of what's going on, because I think Murloc Paladin is quite possibly the worst deck that we're seeing in this format. So I would imagine if it is Murlocs, then we're going to be seeing Hunter come out instead.
Yeah, it is Murloc Paladin.
Mm-hmm.
It's got Crazed Alchemist in it. Does that change your opinion?
I was going to talk about Crazed Alchemist. I was going to say that was like the one tech card that I hadn't seen any of when I was like playing some practice games. Like, hey, you know what? Crazed Alchemist, some totems. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, I was wondering whether we might see 1 or 2 players running that card, and I hadn't seen any. Although I think actually Boar Control might have 1 or 2 in his lists as well, but he didn't make it to broadcast. So there is a Crazed Alch. I want to see it.
I believe we're not going to, though, because it is going to be Swidz on the Hunter, and I believe SilverName is locking in the Mage once again. I have to just do a little quick refresh, because unfortunately, Hunter list was not available for me there for Swidz, so I'll have that in just a second. Let me just check. It should be up now.
They're hiding it from you, Raven.
The judging
they know
can
that you're going to
continue.
scorn it so hard that they just won't let you see it.
Okay, it's halfway there. I'll give him some props for some cards. It is actually very similar to Boston's list, looking at it. It does run a Bone Chewer Brawler, which is a card I've been playing in Hunter recently, mainly because it's basically from Surrender's list that he played last week, that he did well with. Do you know what that card is, Sol?
Nope.
The 2-mana 2/3 Taunt Orc that gains attack damage when it takes damage.
Right. Okay, sure.
So, but I think in this meta, a 2-mana 2/3 Taunt for Hunter is actually a pretty solid card. Honestly, I think it does some work. He is running Boom Pistol and Faceless Corruptor. He isn't running any sort of tech removal, i.e. the Waste Warden or anything like that. Outside of that, it seems like a very, very standard list, but Henchclan Hogsteed is there, which again, I do like right now, and in this pocket meta we have here for this weekend.
Yeah. Sources of 2 or 3 damage from hand are super premium in this metagame, I think. Where, you know, we've been talking in terms of being like hyper focused on Shaman and Paladin, and like specifically Murloc Paladin and Totem Shaman, I guess we boiled it down to as well. But actually, like if you look at the EU meta overall, I think they've separated from that quite a bit, at least in the players that are here qualified for top 8. Because, for example, the games that we are seeing Shaman, we're seeing like Evolve Shaman from Viper, we're seeing this, you know, weird spell Galakron Shaman from Swidz. So we're seeing slightly more, I guess innovation is not the word, because you know, Swidz' deck aside, these are sort of existing decks that people know about. But APAC seemed a lot more similar throughout in the lineups that we were seeing, whereas the players here do seem a little bit more unique in the way that they put things together.
Yeah, I will say, you know, as we are just ticking through the early turns of this game, final note on that, I think APAC has probably suffered these 3 weeks a little bit, because in the past, they have often reflected what happens in other regions in following weeks. And just, I won't say copied, because, well, everyone looks at other people's deck lists and makes their judgments on whether they're good or not, and then uses the good ones. But because the formats have rotated, they don't get they can't, right? Like, they can't go, oh, what did these players bring last week? I'll test it out this week. There's not that opportunity in Swiss. So again, I think that's why we've seen a little bit more in Asia Pacific, where everyone's gone, okay, what's the first go-to? Murloc Paladin, Totem Shaman, let's just lock it in.
Ooh, we're gonna coin out the ping here.
Respect. Bone Chewer Brawler.
Nothing but a bunch of big birds!
Job's done.
Strictly incorrect. Costing yourself APM there, Swidz. Come on.
Yep. What's going on? It's just a funny game of like the coin ping onto a. It wasn't a 2/3, but you understand my point. And then a vaporized into a 1/3. Even Swidz is confused. He's like, Wait.
I mean, I
You're
think
just like-
SilverName just decided that was his curve in advance. He just said, all right, I'm going to coin this ping out. I'm going to pick a spell off this Arcane Breath that I can just play next turn. And the best thing he got offered was a Vaporize, so he played it next turn, you know? Like, it's just kind of where he was with his curve.
It is funny though. I will say I do like the Mana Saber here. I think a lot of the times you would naturally want to play Dragonbane into an empty board because it's Dragonbane, and if you set it up safely, it's insane. But the Mana Saber enables Mana Saber attack Dragonbane hero power in the following turn, which I think just caps it off as just the turn to play. Now, what are you
Now,
about?
if you
This
make
is-
that, now this is an insanely important 50-50, right? If you choose to go for it, because if you go for it and you hit the minion, you can be almost guaranteed that your Mana Saber lives again, and then you get to attack again next turn to ramp into 7. Whereas if you want to guarantee that now, you have to skip the Dragonbane if you don't want to take that 50-50.
You Dragonbane and hero power every day of the week if you have any self-respect as a hunter player right now. This always lands!
Oh, well, okay then.
But honestly, I'll rein in silliness for some seriousness. I think you want Boom Pistol into the Mage turn 6, right? To stop a Dragon Caster. So I think going Boom Pistol now is just a complete waste. Okay, it can stop Malygos, but I don't think you care anywhere near as much about Malygos. So personally, memes aside, I do think you just take the choice, because worst case, the Frizz still has to trade away either a Mana Saber or a Dragonbane. That's a bit of a bad choice for the Mage. Oof. Oh. Little bit annoying. You can't do actually less damage to that boom.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Weirdly, if your guy had one less attack right now, this is a full clear. That's a fairly unique scenario in Hearthstone. How weird.
It does hurt me the Dragonbane's not on board right now. It's just so much damage.
I like your argument. I think, saying just take the 50-50 or whatever, I think, no, come on. But when you present the argument that you block turn 6 by doing it the other way around, but then I guess you're not going to do that, because then your turn 6 is Dino Tamer Brand. But then your turn 6 is Dino Tamer Brand, so you're just freaking happy. I don't know.
There's just a lot of win-win scenarios as far as I can hear. So.
Yeah, I think it's close, but I do like taking the 50-50. I also love this from SilverName. There are times where SilverName just reveals that he is extremely smart, and this is one of them.
Yeah, just trade and Dragon's Bane to kill the Doomsayer.
It just means that if Swidz wants to get his big old dinosaur on board this turn, then it's got to do the illegal thing, trading.
Does he ever just go face with King Crush anyway? That's the real question.
What
just dominate.
You've just slipped into a whole new mode this game, really.
Ooh, decided to go for the trade. Okay, I'll be a bit more serious now. Mainly though, my overall point being Swidz does have a lot of damage in hand right now. So he is starting to really threaten SilverName, even though SilverName is at 25. Doesn't really have too much more to do. He can Rolling Fireball this, which does mean the King Crush goes bye-bye. But again, this Mana Saber is just alive right now, which is causing havoc, honestly.
The moment.
Really big
Tracking, pick the card that says damage on it.
Jeez.
Help.
I don't know what to do.
Someone call an adult, Raven. I have no idea.
It's got to be Zephyrus, right?
I think so, yeah.
Because Mage deals with boards of big dudes pretty reasonably. It does not deal with cards Zephyrus can give you for lethal. And there's just a fine fault this turn anyway with the Dragon's Bane hero power maybe at last. And Alex Traz is a whole turn away yet. So a lot can happen in a turn.
Oh, it's Dragon Queen Alexstrasza though, Raven.
You'll discover another one.
Have you considered that it's Dragon Queen Alexstrasza?
Oh, Swidz.
I have no time for games.
He plays Primordial Explorer. You just get Alexstrasza off that. This is an absurd amount of damage, though. I think this is why I like the Zephrys, too. Look at the damage he's pushing. He has Stormhammer, he has Unleash, then he's got a 9-drop that maybe does nothing on the turn you play it.
Yeah, agreed.
Your wish is my
I do think it was Zephrys by a little bit for me there as well. Brawl is the best he's got, but it's pretty sad 50% of the time. Okay, it's the medium outcome.
The regular outcome.
Yeah, no, the baby outcome. Regular outcome's partner, baby outcome.
I want to see this Corrosive Breath played this turn as well.
Just because you think you're jamming Alexstrasza next turn anyways, you just want to get it done.
Yeah, and if SilverName pings a 2-1 and uses 2 of his mana this turn, I think that is a reasonable outcome.
Okay.
I like that pitch, Subtle.
I don't think it's a ridiculous suggestion, but I can definitely like this Dino Tamer Brown has been a good boy so far. Like the King Crush itself has not got it done. That was much more Dino Trader Brand, but this one has been connecting face turn after turn. So I can understand just leaving it there to keep on attacking.
For me, I think this rough board state / outcome was not a crazy thing to predict in terms of just what Swidz had in hand. And now he has a 9-drop when he could have a Zephrys drop.
Instead of just Zephrys
yeah,
Fireball or something.
look
No,
at
I mean,
this!
I'm with you. I am with you. I think it was very close, but I am with you.
Time runs out on me.
Oof. One of my favourite cards in terms of artwork, but not so impactful, is the camouflaged dirigible. The combination of the artwork's great, and I love the word dirigible.
Swidz, you don't know it yet, but you just won, my friend. Now you know it. Okay. Unleash the Hounds, Corrosive Breath, Hammer to the face, connect with some minions. Who needs the 8/8? Just play this card in your 2-of deck. It's just a 7-mana 2 for it. Just always gets there.
No one
Look
expects it.
I know. Insane.
Swidz going to take Series 2 of the day 3-0, and I think at least that last game really displayed the question marks for me in terms of overall strategy of we saw one of the good decks versus one of the good decks in the game, but it was Hunter versus Mage, a pretty consistent and historically good matchup for the Hunter. So we saw that cross the line in a little bit more a reasonable fashion versus what we saw from the previous series out of Hunter. So I think that was more of a display of what's been going on in general throughout the Swiss at least.
Yeah, for sure. And the Hunter even had like a pretty slow start there, honestly. He just had no pressure come turn 4, like after your little giggle fit at Vaporize and whatever had taken care of his sport. I think that's what wrecked you for the rest of the game, isn't it? You just
it
couldn't
was.
get back into a serious game of Hearthstone.
Into a 1-3.
Yeah, but, nonetheless, I think the Hunter shows that it just has the gas still to get there in the end. And even when you have to track over 2 of the most powerful cards in your deck, it's one of those selections that makes a lot of casual players just go, why do you play tracking in your deck? Just burn all your good cards. Jeez. Yeah, most importantly, you get to draw one of your good cards. And that's very, very important because he didn't even need that one of his good cards to end that game. He was just sat with it in hand and still had enough damage lined up through everything else. Yeah,
and especially, I think tracking, more players should think about it in terms of the Overwatcher. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot the name. The new Demon Hunter, the 3/2 2-mana one, where you pick your next draw. It's not what are you throwing away and what you think's better. It's what do you want to draw next turn, except now, kind of card, right? And that's why, again, if you look at it in that way, Zephrys does just edge it for me because the game was never going to be another, 30 minutes worth of game with the Hunter, right? It was very much the damage is there, finish it now. But a good job for Swidz overall, taking a win over SilverName. We're going to be moving on through the bracket today and get our 2 players. But we're going to see Swidz and Viper. These are veterans of the weekend broadcast at the moment, Sol.
Yeah, I mean, if what we've seen over the last couple of weeks, absolutely 2 of the best performers. I made the point that maybe Swidz had a little bit of a point to prove because we gave all the fanfare to the newcomers and the French GMs. Felkane and Zim came in week 1 and absolutely crushed it, and we were just like, yeah, these 2 new French players have come to show French dominance. And Swidz was like, hang on a second, like I've been here the whole time, and yeah, maybe my season 1 and 2 performances weren't the best, but I said last week, just watching him play, he looks much more settled, much more accepting of his position as a GM, and like he deserves to be here and he belongs. So yeah, looking forward to seeing more from both these players.
Yeah, and it won't be long to wait. We're going to go to a quick break while we set up the next match, so don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back with some more Hearthstone Grandmasters.